January 24th. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Anthony. Here. Mr. Bankowski. Here. Mr. Buchanan. Here. Mrs. Gustafson. Here. Mr. Harmon. Here. Mr. Heiser. Here. Mr. Johnson. Here. Mr. Landy. Here. Mr. Larson. Here. Mr. Nelson. Here. Mr. Nebel.
Here.
Ms. Parker.
Here.
Mr. Pavlak.
Here.
Mr. Penhallow.
Here.
Mr. Proctor is absent. Mr. Scudder.
Here.
Ms. Vanstrom.
Here.
Mr. Wilfong.
Here.
Chairman Shagnon.
Here.
There are 18 members present and 1 member absent. There's quorum.
All right, now we will have the prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance by Legislator Pavlak.
Dear Heavenly Father, pray to you this evening. Lord, you know our prayers before we even ask them. You know what our needs are. You know what our wants are. You know what we need healing for. You know what we need to grow in, Lord, before we even ask. So I ask as a group, as a body, that you will answer our prayers, that you will give us that we ask for. Lord, let us be servants to you. Let us simply just say yes to what you're asking us to do. Let us hear your ask and let us say yes. Lord, we just ask this evening for wisdom, guidance and direction, and help us to make sound decisions. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, that brings us to approval of the minutes for the December 20th meeting of the legislature. So I have a motion to approve the minutes by Legislator Bankowski and a second by Legislator Nebel. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? They're carried. Next item on the agenda is privilege of the floor. This is our first privilege of the floor. Members of the public may comment on any subject relating to any local law, resolution, or motion appearing on tonight's agenda. Individual comments are limited to 3 minutes, and comments representing a group shall be limited to 5 minutes. Is there anyone wishing to address the first privilege of the floor? Seeing no one, I'll close the first privilege of the floor. Now on our agenda, we have 2 commendations, and so the first commendation will be for the Chautauqua Lake Girls Volleyball State Champions, and this will be presented by County Executive Wendell and Legislator Proctor. Legislator Proctor is not with us this evening, so
I'm flying solo. All right, ladies, if you want to come on in, please, and join me up here. It's impressive they're out there. Yep, come right down in the front. They'd rather see you than me. So Office of the County Executive, Chautauqua County, New York, a letter of commendation. Whereas the Chautauqua Lake High School girls volleyball team with the New York State Public High School Athletic Association Class D volleyball state champions in 2023. And whereas Chautauqua Lake girls volleyball team rallied after a 2-0 deficit in the state semifinals to defeat Candor High School. And whereas with the season on the line after losing the first 2 sets, 23-25 and 12-25, Chautauqua Lake went on to win 3 consecutive sets, 25-17, 25-14, 15-12, to advance to the Class D state final at Cool Insuring Arena in Glens Falls, New York. And whereas in the New York State Public High School Athletic Association Class D volleyball championship game, Chautauqua Lake swept Lake George 25-17, 25-13, and 25-20. Whereas this was Chautauqua Lake's first New York State Public High School Athletic Association Class D Volleyball Championship. Now, therefore, we, Paul M. Wendell Jr., Chautauqua County Executive, and Martin J. Proctor, Legislator of District 18, do hereby recognize and congratulate the Chautauqua Lake High School girls volleyball team for their outstanding season and state championship victory. In witness whereof, we have hereto set our hands and caused the seal of the great county of Chautauqua to be affixed this 24th day of January 2024, signed myself and Marty Proctor. You know, as a coach for many years, it is, without saying, to accomplish a high school state championship is no small feat. What these girls did, being down 2-0, 2 games behind, takes a lot to come back. I don't know. Many teams may have folded up and say, well, at least we made it to the semis. But congratulations, ladies, for your tenacity and for bringing back a state championship to Chautauqua Lake High School. So, the captain or the coach? Who's the coach? There you go. Anyone want to speak?
Good, thank you.
Congratulations. Good job. Thanks.
Lead the way.
Thank you so much. Congratulations again. Thank you. Congratulations. I think I'm more impressed. They came in 2 by 2. They walked out 2 by 2. Probably the most uniform group coming in and out. So that's discipline. No wonder they won that state title.
And now for our second commendation. We will be presenting a commendation to Dr. Lillian Ney of the Board of Health. Lillian, please come down.
You want to start? Tag team. We're here in the center.
Whereas Dr. Lillian Vitanza Ney was appointed to the Chautauqua County Board of Health on September 3rd, 2014. And whereas Dr. Ney has served the community to advance the goals of the Chautauqua County Board of Health, which is to promulgate, adopt, and publish rules, regulations, orders, and directives for the security of life and health in Chautauqua County. And whereas Dr. Ney has served Chautauqua County in countless facets throughout her career, including Jamestown Community College Board of Trustees, the Gebbe Foundation, Jamestown's Renaissance Corporation, Northwest Arena, the Jamestown City Center Development Corporation, James Prendergast Library Association, Chautauqua Institution, Wells College, United Way of Southern Chautauqua County, American Heart Association, Family Service of Jamestown, Reg Lene Civic Center, and Roger Torrey Peterson Institute. Woo!
And whereas we are thankful for Dr. Ney's exemplary service to the community to help prevent illness as well as promoting and protecting the health and wellness of Chautauqua County residents. Now, therefore, we, Paul M. Wendell Jr., Chautauqua County Executive, and Pierre E. Chagnon, Chairman of the Chautauqua County Legislature, do hereby recognize and thank Lillian Ney for her dedication, service, and endless contributions to the people of Chautauqua County. In witness whereof, we have hereto set our hands and caused the seal of the great county of Chautauqua to be affixed this 24th day of January 2024, signed myself and Pierre Chagnon. Dr. Ney. The microphone is yours.
You're so welcome.
Please do.
I really hadn't planned to say anything, but there's a couple things I think you might be interested in, apart from this. I don't know if anybody here, well, I know Dr. Falk knows, I know Mike knows, and Sherry knows, but years ago, I had a position here in the county. And guess what? That was many years ago. It must have been figuring in the 80s. I didn't check it out, but guess what I was? Acting Commissioner of Health. Can you imagine? That's news, right? I thought it would be. And then the other thing, I know at least once and perhaps twice, I was on a commission called the Charter Review Commission. You're familiar with that, I'm sure. Do you remember when I was involved with that years back?
Yes.
It's hard to believe, but I'm very appreciative of the appointment to the Board of Health. It's been a really wonderful experience for me. It was a lot of new experiences during the pandemic, and you had your, how would you say, not troubles, but the word I'm looking for is challenges here in this room, and we had our challenges too in the Board of Health. So that having been said, we all learned a lot, I think, and as time goes on, hopefully when the next virus comes along, which everyone who seems to know says it will, we have tools that we can use, always remembering that we absolutely have to work together, always. Sorry I took so long.
Well done.
Thanks again.
Just on a personal note, I've known Dr. Ney for quite a long time now, but she does manage to do a few other things as well as being a loving grandmother and a devoted mother. But we talked about this, and I jokingly would agree with Pierre when Dr. Ney expressed she was going to tender her resignation. Pierre said, no, we're not going to accept it. And I agree. There are certain people that you wish would be here for forever, and Dr. Ney's contributions to the health department. But realistically, if you go anywhere in Chautauqua County and mention Dr. Ney's name, it is with reverence and a great deal of appreciation and honor. So on behalf of myself and the residents, thank you for all you've done for Chautauqua County. Thank you.
Take us away.
There are no veto messages from County Executive Wendell from the December 20th, 2023 meeting. Our office has received 5 communications. Are there any items you wish to have read aloud? If you would like a copy of any of these items, please let our office know. Local Law Introductory Number 1-24. A local law amending Local Law 13-22 providing for a management salary plan for county officers and employees regarding administrative coordinator for the Department of Health.
Are there any comments, any questions on the local law? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Anthony. Yes. Mr. Bankowski.
Yes.
Mr. Buchanan.
Yes.
Mrs. Gustafson. Mr. Harmon.
Yes.
Mr. Heiser.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Landy.
Yes.
Mr. Larson.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Nebel.
Yes.
Ms. Parker.
Yes.
Mr. Pavlak.
Yes.
Mr. Penhallow.
Yes.
Mr. Proctor is absent. Mr. Scudder.
Yes.
Ms. Vanstrom. Mr. Wilfong.
Yes.
Chairman Shagnon.
Yes.
There are 18 yes votes and 1 member absent. The local law is adopted. Local Law Introductory 2-24. A local law amending Local Law 13-22, providing for a management salary plan for county officers and employees regarding Deputy Compliance Officer.
Are there any comments or any questions on the local law? Hearing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Anthony.
Yes.
Mr. Bankowski.
Yes.
Mr. Buchanan.
Yes.
Mrs. Gustafson. Mr. Harmon.
Yes.
Mr. Heiser.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Landy.
Yes.
Mr. Larson.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. Nebel.
Yes.
Ms. Parker.
Yes.
Mr. Pavlak? Mr. Penhollow? Mr. Proctor is absent. Mr. Scudder? Ms. Vanstrom? Mr. Wilfong? Chairman Shagnon?
Yes.
There are 18 yes votes and 1 member absent. The local law is adopted. All right. Tabled resolution number 327-23. Authorize use of 3% reserve funding and authorize agreement with Chautauqua Region Economic Development Corporation to initiate a public art program.
Is there anyone wishing to propose an action on the tabled resolution? Seeing none, the resolution shall remain tabled.
Resolutions?
Legislator Bankowski.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we block 6-24 through 19-24.
Okay, Legislator Wilfong. We have a second from Legislator Wilfong to block resolutions 624 through 1924. Any discussion on the motion to block the resolutions? Hearing none, all those in favor of blocking the resolutions, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? They are blocked.
6-24, confirm appointment, Parks Commission. 7-24, confirm appointments and reappointment, Airport Commission. 8-24, confirm appointment, Landfill Commission. 9-24, confirm appointment, New York State Fish and Wildlife Management Board. 10-24, confirm reappointment, North Chautauqua Lake Sewer District Board. 11-24, confirm reappointment, South and Center Chautauqua Lake Sewer Districts Board. 12-24, confirm reappointments, Chautauqua County Ethics Board. 13-24, confirm appointments and reappointments, Chautauqua County Fire Advisory Board. 14-24, confirm appointments and reappointments, Chautauqua County Emergency Medical Services Council. 15-24, confirm appointment, Chautauqua County Youth Board. 16-24, confirm appointments to the Chautauqua County Agricultural and Farmland Protection Board. 17-24, confirm appointment, Lake Erie Management Commission. 18-24, confirm appointment and reappointment, Chautauqua County Visitors Bureau Board of Directors. 19-24, confirm appointment, County of Chautauqua Industrial Development Agency Board of Directors.
All right, are there any questions, comments, discussion on any of the blocked resolutions 624 through 1924? Hearing none. All those in favor of the blocked resolutions 624 through 1924, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The blocked resolutions are carried.
20-24, amend capital budget for underground fuel tank removal.
Any comments, any questions on the resolution? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried.
21-24, amend Carts Hub capital project account.
Are there any comments or are there any questions on the resolution? Legislator Nelson.
Just a quick comment, Mr. Chairman. As one of the Jamestown legislators, I just want to wholeheartedly support this resolution. I think it's a much-needed improvement to the CART sub in the city of Jamestown, and it's greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments on the resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried.
22-24, compromise of disputed chargeback amount.
Are there any questions, any discussion on the resolution? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried.
23-24, authorize acceptance of funds from the Department of Justice Bureau of justice assistance for the State Criminal Alien Assistance Program, SCAAP, for FY 2023.
Any comments, any questions on the resolution? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried.
24-24, amend 2024 budget to implement the jail property packaging system project using funding from the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA.
Are there any questions, any comments on the resolution? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried.
25-24, amend emergency services 2024 budget, 2024 eclipse preparedness.
Are there any questions or any discussion on the resolution? Legislator Parker.
Thank you, Chair Shagnon. I wanted to note that there are 3 different items that are being asked for on January 24th in preparation of April 8th. And one of them is medical supplies, which I think is needed. The other one is software and location awareness. I mean, that's not the right word, but anyway. And then the third thing is these 2 large signs. My understanding is that it may be difficult to get these signs. They are not absolutely, in my opinion, necessary. We have 2 already, and I had asked for a compromise. This close to $200,000 in unassigned fund balance is 20% of the $1 million we asked to be given back to the residents of Chautauqua County, and so I cannot support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Legislator Nebel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This resolution takes money from the unassigned fund balance, money that comes primarily from local property taxes. And look, we have a lot of middle-class taxpayers that I think are struggling to make ends meet. Past legislatures were very reluctant to take money from the fund balance, especially if we had an alternative funding source. And in this case, we do. The 3% Tourism Reserve Fund, a dedicated fund paid for by tourists staying in hotels and motels in Chautauqua County. It's our bed tax. This is where the money should come from. When the time is appropriate, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to amend this resolution.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments on the resolution? Legislator Wilfong.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had the opportunity to caucus with my group before we came in, and there were some questions that came up. And luckily, I spoke to Noel Gutman out in the hallway. He believes that these supplies that he's asking for emergency services are absolutely necessary. During the audit and control meeting that we sat in last week, Mr. Shagnon himself actually read the actual legal ramifications of the 3% occupancy tax. And in consulting with our higher officials in the state, they said don't even try to get that money out of there. If you want this, it's going to have to come out of the general fund. So I believe that we should recognize Noel Gutman for his expertise in what he needs, and that we should give him what he's asking for, because what happens if we do have a problem? Hopefully we will not. But it's very important that we actually take pride in our county and make sure everybody is safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Legislator Nelson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a member of the Public Safety Committee, I oppose this resolution. I feel that the eclipse will be a significant event. We'll see a bump in tourism. We will see additional traffic in the county, but I don't think it warrants this additional spending. I have confidence that we will be prepared for the day and that the safety of the county residents will not be compromised without spending an additional $200,000 from our unassigned fund balance. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the resolution? Legislator Nebel, back to you.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I think Noel's request is reasonable. Okay, my concern is just the funding source that we take this money out of. And I'd just like to go back to the county website. The application process for 2024, 3% tourism projects. I printed this out this afternoon. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but just this one sentence. Programs and initiatives should help create awareness of Chautauqua County as a place to visit and/or improve the likelihood of repeat visits to this area. It's my contention that if people come here for the eclipse, that they have a safe and pleasurable experience. I think there's a good chance that they're going to come back in the future. So I feel that it would be proper to take this money from the 3% Tourism Reserve Fund.
Okay, any other questions or comments on the resolution as presented? Legislator Nebel, I think you asked for an opportunity.
Okay. Yes, so I would like to amend this motion. I guess technically, what we would do is, on the motion, the halfway down the motion, increase the use of fund balance. That would stay the same, the title. But where we have A and then the dashes and dashes to .917.0000, unassigned fund balance, fund balance for $194,350. I would like to change that or amend that to, well, all the dashes, .883.000, reserve fund balance dash reserve for occupancy tax, $194,350. The increase in the appropriation accounts would stay the same.
Okay, we have a motion to amend Resolution 25-24. Do we have a second? Legislator Scudder? So we have a motion and a second to amend the resolution, as Legislator Nebel just indicated. Discussion on the motion to amend. Hearing none. All those in favor of amending Resolution 25-24 as indicated by Legislator Nebel, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Okay. All right. Mr. Anthony. No. Mr. Bankowski.
Yes.
Mr. Buchanan.
Yes.
All right. Mrs. Gustafson. No. Thank you. Mr. Harmon.
No.
Mr. Heiser.
No.
Mr. Johnson.
No.
Mr. Landy.
No.
Mr. Larson.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
No.
Mr. Nebel.
Yes.
Ms. Parker.
No.
Mr. Pavlak.
No.
Mr. Penhallow.
No.
Mr. Proctor is absent. Mr. Scudder.
Yes.
Ms. Vanstrom.
No.
Mr. Wilfong.
No.
Chairman Shagnon.
No.
Okay, there are 13 yes votes, 5 no votes, and 1 member absent.
I think you have that reversed,
Yep.
Olivia.
Sorry. There are 5 yes votes, 13 no votes.
I like the first.
I know, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, you're throwing me off.
Okay, so the motion to amend the resolution is defeated. Is there any other questions, comments, discussion on Resolution 25-24 as presented? Legislator Penhallow.
Mr. Chair, I would ask that Neil Gutman, how confident we are that there could be other grants out there to backfill this usage from the unassigned fund balance? That's just a question that could be noted.
Okay. Noel, would you like to address that question at this point or later?
I didn't fully hear the question.
The question was if there are other grants that could be utilized for this expenditure if it's approved.
I am not aware of any grants right now that could be utilized for that.
Okay, thank you, Noel. Did I answer your question? Yes. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Legislator Wilfong.
I just want to say, when Noel spoke with us, he asked, one of the reasons that it's written the way it is, the 2024 eclipse preparedness, is just in case later on that the state or the state or federal government make funds available, we can actually apply for those and then reimburse ourselves. So that's why it's amended, and it's actually, the title is the 2024 eclipse preparedness. So we could slip in there if there is any, but we're not guaranteeing that there is.
Okay, any other comments? Legislator Nebel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If emergency services says this equipment is necessary for the eclipse, I will support it. My concern is where the funding came from, and well, I guess it's got to come from the unassigned fund balance. So I will support a motion now as written.
Okay. Any other comments, questions on the resolution? Hearing none, I'm going to suggest the clerk call the roll again. Go ahead.
Ready? Yep. All right. Mr. Anthony.
Yes.
Mr. Bankowski.
No.
Mr. Buchanan. Mrs. Gustafson. Mr. Harmon.
Yes.
Mr. Heiser.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Landy.
Yes.
Mr. Larson. Mr. Nelson.
No.
Mr. Nebel.
Yes.
Ms. Parker. Mr. Pavlak.
Yes.
Mr. Penhallow.
Yes.
Mr. Proctor is absent. Mr. Scudder.
Yes.
Ms. Vanstrom. Mr. Wilfong.
Yes.
Chairman Shagnon.
Yes.
Okay, let's try this again. I'm gonna write it out first. There are 13 yes votes, 5 no votes, and 1 member absent. The resolution is adopted. All right. 26-24, accept Southern Tier Community Impact Grant.
Any comments, any questions on the resolution? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried.
27-24, FY 2023 Hazardous Materials Emergency Preparedness, HMEP Grant Program.
Any comments, any questions on the resolution? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried.
28-24, amend 2024 budget to implement Round 3 of the Marketing Assistance to Businesses and Not-for-Profits project within the Chautauqua County American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA spending plan.
Any questions, any discussion on the resolution? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried.
29-24, authorize extension of lease agreement for Department of Planning and Development at the BWB Center.
Any discussion, any questions on the resolution? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried.
30-24, amend rules and regulations of the Chautauqua County Legislature.
Any comments, any questions on the resolution? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Carried.
31-24, authorize agreement with NYS ITS for orthoimagery enhancements.
Are there any questions or any comments on the resolution? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried.
32-24, reallocating salary grade for resource assistant, human resources.
Are there any comments or questions on the resolution? Hearing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Anthony.
Yes.
Mr. Bankowski.
Yes.
Mr. Buchanan. Mrs. Gustafson. Mr. Harmon. Mr. Heiser. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Landy. Mr. Larson. Mr. Nelson. Mr. Nebel. Ms. Parker. Mr. Pavlak. Mr. Penhollow. Mr. Proctor is absent. Mr. Scudder. Ms. Vanstrom. Mr. Wilfong. And Chairman Shagnon.
Yes.
There are 18 yes votes and 1 member absent. The resolution is adopted. 33-24, reallocating salary grade for communications technician trainee, communications technician, senior communications technician, and communications system coordinator.
Are there any comments or any questions on the resolution? Hearing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Anthony. Mr. Bankowski. Mr. Buchanan. Mrs. Gustafson. Mr. Harmon. Mr. Heiser. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Landy. Mr. Larson. Mr. Nelson. Mr. Nebel. Ms. Parker. Mr. Pavlak. Mr. Penhollow. Mr. Proctor is absent. Mr. Scudder. Ms. Vanstrom. Mr. Wilfong. Chairman Shagnon.
Yes.
There are 18 yes votes and 1 member absent. The resolution is adopted. All right. Motion A on the agenda, proclaiming February as Black History Month, has received the required amount of signatures to be brought to the floor.
Are there any comments on motion A proclaiming February Black History Month? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Motion B on the agenda, proclaiming January Human Trafficking Awareness Month, has received the required amount of signatures to be brought to the floor.
Are there any comments on motion B proclaiming January Human Trafficking Awareness Month? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. And that brings us, ladies and gentlemen, to our 2 presentations for this evening. The first presentation will be regarding the Jefferson Project and their 2023 report. And I will point out for the audience that the report will be available after the presentation, so no need to take notes. And then we will have a following presentation by the Salary Review Commission representative regarding the commission's final recommendations. And I will point out for the legislature that this is a presentation of their recommendations. There is no need for discussion, debate, questions, because following this month's presentation, you could expect in the next month or 2 or 3, there will be resolutions coming forth proposing actions from the recommendation. That will be the time for discussion, debate, amendment, actions, and so forth. So, sit back and enjoy the show. Where do we begin?
I can hear you, Kevin.
Kohler and Kevin Rose, who'll be presenting on behalf of the Jefferson Project. The Jefferson Project was something that began in Lake George prior to my coming into office. This has been going on for several years, and the project is a collaboration between IBM and RPI, Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. The amount of information that they gathered in their first preliminary studies with Lake George has yielded some great recommendations, and they have seen changes in Lake George. Jokingly, I hope that Lake George wasn't offended by us beating them. Chautauqua Lake beat Lake George, but anyway, we'll get through that. What you're going to find today is a massive amount of scientific research that has been taking place right here in our lake. As you have heard, the Jefferson Project is so profound and has been supported by the county so far as the governor herself has put it in the budget to fund this to its totality. Now, again, hoping that gets across the finish line, but even the governor herself realizes the significance of the study of harmful algal blooms and its impact on Chautauqua Lake, not only from a research standpoint, but from the tourism economic value and the overall health of this lake and the health of our residents who recreate and those who visit. So without further ado, we'll turn this over to the Jefferson Project team and let them present their findings.
Thank you. Can folks in the audience, or all the legislators, can you hear me? Great. I see thumbs up. Yeah, nods. Yeah, great. Okay, thank you. Thank you. So I'll introduce myself and I'll turn it over to Harry to introduce himself. My name is Kevin Rose. I'm a professor at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. Expertise is in freshwater ecology. And I'm the director of the Jefferson Project and the director of Darren Freshwater Institute, which is our field station in Lake George. I'm coming to you because I'm studying lakes around the world, including Chautauqua, but right now I'm actually on the South Island of New Zealand. So I'm in a t-shirt, and it's bright and sunny early afternoon here. But this is really important to us. We've been doing research now at Chautauqua for 3 years, and so I'm really grateful for the opportunity to present to you some of our findings from 2023 and in context of past years as well. Harry, do you want to introduce yourself too?
Sure, thanks Kevin. Harry Kohler, IBM Research. I'm an IBM Fellow Environmental Science and have been with the Jefferson Project from its design, inception, if you will, concept, all the way through now as an associate director working with Kevin and also our third partner, which is the LGA. So I've been involved obviously with Chautauqua Institute and Chautauqua Lake activities since the beginning as well. So thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you. And Kevin will lead the presentation today.
Great, thank you, Harry. And I'm going to share my screen now. We've got about 15 slides we'll go through over the next roughly half hour. Once I start sharing my screen, I won't be able to see the video feed from your room. So if you have any questions along the way or want to stop me for any clarifications or if there's any issues, please put that in the chat window or unmute yourself so I can hear you. Okay, hopefully people can see this. All right, and I'll get started in presentation mode. So, this is our presentation to Chautauqua County Legislature.
I'm sorry,
so thank you all for inviting us to give this presentation.
I'm sorry,
a little
gentlemen.
bit of context. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to pause you for just one moment.
Yep.
And we're going to work on our audio really quick. Can you try to turn up your audio?
Sure, it's as loud as it can go right
Okay.
now.
Their audio's up.
And should I continue to talk?
If you could just hold on for 1 second. Okay, I'm sorry, keep talking, he says.
Okay, all right. Let me know if the audio volume is good. It's as loud as it can get on this end.
Okay, we just hear a lot of static right now.
Okay, I don't hear any static. Harry, do you hear any static or anything?
I hear no static and I hear you loud and clear.
Okay.
Okay, so don't know, might be on your end, but I don't know if there's anything to do.
Yeah, I think it's definitely on our end. Okay.
Should we continue to talk?
Oh, yes,
Yes.
it's getting better.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, yeah. Thank you all for bearing with us through this, and I'm just going to continue to ramble until we get time in to talk about the presentation.
Okay, we've got it. We've got it. You're all set. Thank you.
Great. Okay. All right. All right. So, I don't know why. Yeah, I'm hoping. Yeah. Okay. There. That'll minimize. Okay. Great. So, as I mentioned, I'm Kevin Rose. I'm the director of the Jefferson Project, and I took over in 2022. But the Jefferson Project has been going on now for 2023. Completed our 10th year working at Lake George, and so we just completed a 10-year anniversary and produced a 10-year report, which is publicly available on our partner website, on the Lake George Association's website, and we can provide the link to you if anyone's interested in that. But that just gives you a sense on sort of how the Jefferson Project has evolved over time. What does it really mean? We'll get into that. What does it mean for Chautauqua during this presentation? But in that report, it shows you what have we done at Lake George and what are we bringing to bear at Chautauqua Lake. So in this slide, you can see some of the different approaches that we use. Over the past decade, for example, in the upper left, you can see what we call a vertical profiler. You see the solar panels on this pontoon like setup. In 2023, we deployed the newest state-of-the-art vertical profilers designed by our in-house team in Chautauqua Lake. So we're on now our third generation of these. And below that, you see a heat map. The orange and purple colors indicate temperatures through the water column. We generate very large volumes of data with this approach, and then we can mine that and apply it with, use it with models to really understand the entire lake. And the diagram in the bottom left shows you a typical food web model. We model the food web of our study lakes. We also look at lake circulation and the water mass movement. We model weather, etc. We also continue to do stream surveys, experiments, and a lot of outreach too. So those are all the components that we do, and that's what we brought to bear at Chautauqua Lake. We are not a monolithic entity. We're not an environmental consulting firm. We're really a consortium. We really believe in the power of collaboration here. So we work closely with folks at SUNY Fredonia and Bowling Green State University, as well as partnerships across, for example, the Alliance, Chautauqua Lake and Water Management Alliance, or Watershed Management Alliance, Chautauqua Lake Partnership, Chautauqua Lake Association. Each of these organizations has been invaluable to us, whether providing historical contextual data, access to some sensors that occasionally we don't have access to. And of course, our partnerships with the Chautauqua Institution, Chautauqua County, the Ralph Sheldon Foundation have been instrumental to our success in getting our operation to Lake George for the past several years now. Our project goals here going into 2023 was really to develop a holistic understanding of the water quality dynamics in Chautauqua Lake, accounting for spatial variability. So there's North Basin versus South Basin, but even within those basins, there's a lot of variability around the lake, and temporal variability, thinking about seasonality in the lakes and understanding why algal blooms, for example, happen when they do in the year, with an overall emphasis of trying to understand the causes of harmful algal blooms, ultimately to mitigate them, and before we can mitigate them, forecast when exactly they might be occurring to let people and other organizations on the lake be forewarned about their impending emergence. So in 2023, we applied a lot of technologies, a lot of different approaches to doing this. So we have the vertical profilers you can see in the upper left here. The vertical profilers on the lake, these are, as I mentioned, our latest generation vertical profilers. We have these sensors called, and you can see this picture in the middle, 3 people working on a sensor. It's called an acoustic Doppler current profiler, and measures water mass movement in 3 dimensions in the lake. And so we can use that to look at exchange between the basins, etc. We continued a manual sampling program because sensors can't do it all. We have a team of researchers that go out every 2 weeks at over a dozen sites around the lake and measure water quality. So this is things like nutrients, phytoplankton community, zooplankton, etc. Technologically, we're taking that data off of our vertical profilers, and we've been using models to do it. This is led by a team at IBM Research looking at, for example, water mass movement. And we can see in this simulation, simulated particles from the South Basin and how quickly do they flow northward. And all of these simulations are validated with our measurements. That's something that might not mean much to many of you, but if you ask a lot of other organizations, how are your models validated? A lot of times they're not, right? And so you just have to trust that the model works, but we don't trust that the models always work. We want to make sure that they do. We're also using satellite imagery to look at remote sensing up and down the basin across the North and South Basin. We use publicly available satellite imagery, and we have access to commercially available satellite imagery when needed. We found some really interesting insights from mining historic satellite imagery that I'll show you. We also did some genomic sampling, where we're sampling for looking at the genes of different species, of especially the cyanobacteria. The overall goal there is to try to understand why blooms occur, these harmful algal blooms that occur, and why do they occur when they occur? What are the triggers for the blooms, and what are the triggers for toxin production? That's something we did the sampling this year, but we haven't done the genomic analyses yet, so all of those samples are still frozen. So that was beyond the scope of the funding that we had for 2023. In the upper right, we deployed nutrient sensors. So these were on loan as part of our partnership with other organizations, where we deployed these phosphate sensors that measure different forms of phosphorus in the bottoms of along the lake bottom. So we can look at, does the lake bottom release phosphorus, for example, during periods when the water column is stratified. And I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. And finally, algal tiles. We conducted this survey this summer where we put out these tiles, pretty simple approach, but we look at algal growth on these tiles all around nearshore areas and then over the course of the season. And that gives us a sense on how quickly does the algae grow in different areas, and is there a difference between what we see in the water column and what's growing on the rocks in the benthos or the bottom area in nearshore areas around the lake. And we're still analyzing a lot of that data that came in. So what I'm going to highlight over the next 10, 15 minutes or so are some of our select findings. Here we have a tremendous amount of data. We've got over a 60-page report that you'll all get a copy of, and you're all invited to read that, comment on it, send us comments, any questions that you have. I hope that folks will share my email with you. I'll be very accessible to answer any questions you have. Here, we don't have time to get into 60 plus pages of reports, so we're just going to hit some of the highlights and why they're important and what they mean. So first, here is some historical data from 2022, as well as some contemporary data from 2023 on the left and the right, respectively, showing dissolved oxygen levels in phosphorus. So dissolved oxygen is oxygen, just like we need it to breathe. All complex life in aquatic ecosystems needs it as well. And dissolved oxygen, typically what we see is surface waters here. If you look at this heat map, the green on the left-hand side, this heat map, the green shows you where oxygen is plentiful. And close to the surface, we can see that it is plentiful. This is sufficient for all complex life forms. But below, as we go deeper into the water column of the North Basin, below about 10 meters or a little over 30 feet deep, that lake is consistently what's referred to as anoxic. So there is no oxygen during the most of the summer period and ending in the early fall in those deeper layers. So no complex life can live in those layers. It's effectively a dead zone in the bottom of the lake. Chemically, something really interesting happens when we lose oxygen. The sediments tend to release phosphorus that's typically bound to iron. That iron releases the phosphorus when it goes anoxic, when we lose oxygen. And that process is referred to as external loading. And we see that external loading consistently occurs in the North Basin, that when we lose that oxygen and we lose it for months at a time, then we get that internal loading of phosphorus. And we balance that with understanding external loading. And external loading is phosphorus or nitrogen that comes in from the watershed around the lake. And internal loading acts as a feedback mechanism that once you get a certain amount of external loading that's occurred, you typically get a lot of algal growth, a lot of algal blooms. Those algae settle out of the water column and die, and that decomposition, that's bacterial growth in the deep areas of the lake, consumes all the oxygen, and that process then releases that phosphorus from the sediments back to the water column and keeps it going anoxic. So what we see there is a positive feedback loop operating, driven by external loading ultimately, but then locked into place because of that internal feedback mechanism. Later in the fall, as you see here, the green dominates the full area of the water column here, and the blue declines and drops out of the picture by mid to late September. What we see there is the lake is cooling down, and then oxygen from the atmosphere is then mixed all the way top to bottom as the lake cools down. And the top graph we can see is SRP, which is soluble reactive phosphorus. We can think about that as junk food for the algae. And that becomes really available in August to September. On the right-hand side, what we see is something interesting. This is data from the south basin of the lake. And here you see another heat map, which is the blue to white, and that shows you oxygen saturation, or a measure of oxygen availability. Now, typically, the south basin, we tended to think about it as there's probably none of this internal loading occurring. It probably doesn't go anoxic. But we can see, and this is a scale over several days here, not months like we see on the left-hand side, just over the course of several days, and we see this repeatedly throughout 2023, is that the bottom of the South Basin goes anoxic for short periods of time. And when it goes anoxic, and we can see this is our really high-frequency phosphorus data now in this red line, we can see that when it goes anoxic, we typically get a pulse of phosphorus coming up, meaning that it'll lose oxygen for short periods of time, maybe a day, and then as soon as you lose oxygen, phosphorus immediately spikes coming out of the sediments of the South Basin. This is really important because it means that we not only have internal loading occurring in the North Basin, we also see it in the South Basin, and that's something that wasn't believed to occur previously. Now, why is it occurring in the South Basin? What we see here, this is probably based on what I could see in the room. These figures are pretty small for folks, especially in the back of the room, so I'll explain what we're seeing here. I'll start with the top here, is we're looking at data from our acoustic Doppler current profilers. These show us water mass movement in the lake. And over the course of several days, what we see is that when we get these transient stratification events in the South Basin, that we get very calm conditions, right? So wind speed is low, and that means then that the surface temperatures actually warm up more than the deeper water temperatures. And you can see that in the bottom figure. This is that bottom figure. You can see the orange to yellow is high temperatures, and the black or purples are lower temperatures. And during these transient stratification events, that temperature is different through the water column. That's what we would call stratification. And that's when then, as soon as it stratifies, there's so much organic matter in the water column there, it goes anoxic within a single day of it. So all the oxygen is consumed in those deeper layers, and as soon as that happens, then we get that internal loading of phosphorus coming out of the sediments. And we also see in the green figure, that's phycocyanin. Phycocyanin is a pigment that cyanobacteria produce, and so we can use this sensor as an indicator for cyanobacteria. Well, when it gets really calm like that and we get temporary stratification, we also see those really dark green areas. Those are right near the surface because all the algae are floating up, and that's often when we see some severe blooms that are occurring. So another thing that we've discovered using our data is that we also see these short-term internal loading events in the North Basin. So I mentioned how we get this internal loading that occurs that when the lake goes anoxic, that sediments can release phosphorus, and that definitely occurs, and that's locked the lake into this feedback loop where typically, we're getting external loading coming in, seeding the water column, seeding the sediments with phosphorus, and then the sediments are acting like a continual source of phosphorus in addition to what's coming in from watershed. We see occasional these pulse increase of conductance, and you see this in the bottom figure here, this dark green to yellow, this is a measure of conductivity. So we can think about it as salts, but it's not just like salt, like table salt. This is any types of ions in the water. So it includes things like iron, and so with this peak, we see this event, for example, on July 30th, where a lot of this came up higher into the water column, and the blue on top of that is a different water layer. That's your surface waters with lower conductivity. And we see this pulse coming up into the upper part of the water column. This is really important because it shows that those nutrients that come out of the sediments don't just stay in the bottom of the water column, that there's these events that occur, these transient events, even in the North Basin, that pulse or drive the upward flow of nutrients from the sediments into even the upper part of the water column. And this, we think, seeds the algal blooms that later occur. So this discovery, consistent also with the transient stratification that we see in the South Basin, gives us a tool to begin forecasting algal blooms, because we think that the algal blooms, while we know they need light, they need nutrients, and they need calm weather conditions. And the fact that we can now see what we think is this increase in phosphorus coming out of the sediments and then peaking, being pulsed upward through the water column, gives us the ability to start developing forecasts of when exactly harmful algal blooms will occur. Another really useful tool to understand both current dynamics as well as historical dynamics is satellite remote sensing imagery. Chautauqua Lake is a very nice, large lake, and so we can use that ability, use that size and the ability of satellites that typically don't see really small things to go back in time, to look at these past couple years, as well as go back even over several decades. And so there's the EPA and NOAA, there's something called the Cyan Project that has put out a lot of imagery, publicly available imagery, and we've mined that and processed that specific for Lake Chautauqua. And we've coupled that also with our in the water and sort of around the lake measurements that we make. And so now we can really understand both from the satellite, what does the satellite see, as well as how does that reflect what's going on under the water. So that's something that really nobody else in the world is doing, this sort of technological merging of different data sets like this. In the upper left, this is something called the Cyanobacteria Index, or CI. When that's high, it means it's a really severe, the satellite is seeing really severe blooms across the surface of the lake. And this goes back, we're just showing here about the last 8 years of data. And the two graphs, the upper one is showing the North Basin and the lower one is showing the South Basin. And first thing that sticks out, you can see the South Basin typically gets, what the satellite can see is much more severe algal blooms in the South Basin and North Basin. Probably doesn't surprise that many people, but there's some other very interesting things in there. We can see the algal blooms are not a new phenomenon by any means. And if we look back through the early 2000s, they were consistently occurring then as well. We can also see that there's a delay between when the North Basin and South Basins occur as well. That typically the algal blooms in the north are, we believe, are more strongly limited because of that stratification, that seasonal stratification limits a lot of that nutrient pulsing up to the upper part of water column. Meanwhile, the South Basin shows a more predictable seasonal pattern. Now we've taken these seasonal patterns and decomposed them and looked for correlates between air temperature, wind speed, Schmidt stability. That's a measure of how strongly stratified is that water column. Do we see big differences between the surface waters and deep waters, or small differences in temperature? Big differences means it's really strongly stratified, or Schmidt stability is really high. And then here is Cyanobacteria Index for South Basin and North Basin. This just shows two example years, 2021 and 2009, where we can now look at the full seasonal dynamics. So the remote sensing tool gives us the ability to look at spatial heterogeneity. It gives us the ability to merge historical data sets with our in situ data sets. And using this, we are beginning to discover that there's different seasonal patterns that occur. Definitely, every year is definitely not the same as the others. And it's driven a lot by the spring mixing dynamics that based on the timing of when that water column stratification sets up, how much ice was on the lake the preceding year determines what the water temperature is in the springtime. How warm do deep water temperatures get? And the cyanobacteria tend to do best when those deep water temperatures are really nice and warm. Now moving out of our sensor and satellite imagery processing a little bit is just tell you a little bit more about our sampling program. As I mentioned, we can't do everything with sensors, and so we still have this consistent sampling program. And this is really the hallmark of a lot of monitoring programs, is that sampling is done and has been done historically in Chautauqua Lake, and we appreciate others having shared data with us to look at historical concentrations and whatnot. For the last 3 years now, we've been maintaining this sampling program. In 2023, you can see the data that we collected there in the blue lines. And what you're seeing on the left is total nitrogen, in the middle is ammonium, and in the bottom is nitrate. And you're looking at the different forms of total nitrogen. And we can see then the seasonal dynamics between the North Basin and the South Basin. On the right-hand side is phosphorus. So left-hand side is nitrogen, right-hand side is phosphorus between the North and South Basin. Again, the different color lines indicate the different years. And we can see some interesting dynamics here. For example, there's a lot of variation in the nutrient chemistry. The different forms of nitrogen and phosphorus are doing different things. There's a consistent trend of increasing soluble reactive phosphorus in the season, as we progress in the season across all years. Soluble reactive phosphorus, like I said, is really like the junk food for the algae. And so we can see, for example, here in the North Basin, as the season progresses, SRP tends to increase, and we get that peak there later in the year. The ratio of nitrogen to phosphorus can indicate cyanobacteria dominance. So if we go back here to our diagram showing nitrogen and phosphorus levels, and we calculate the ratio between nitrogen and phosphorus, that can tell us something really important about what is driving the changes in the phytoplankton community that we see. As a rule of thumb, those cyanobacteria, they're the ones that form those harmful algal blooms that can form toxins on the lake. Those cyanobacteria dominate when the nitrogen to phosphorus ratio drops below about 30. And we can see across both the South and the North Basin, that ratio is solidly below 30. Give you a sense for context, and one of the benefits of us working in other lakes is that the nitrogen to phosphorus ratio in Lake George has just started in recent years to drop below 30. It's dropping below 30 because phosphorus concentrations have been going up, and nitrogen concentrations in that lake have been actually going down, mostly because atmospheric deposition is going down. The air is getting cleaner throughout the Northeast. But nitrogen going down, phosphorus going up, means that ratio between those two is changing. And we're seeing there cyanobacteria really starting to dominate. And in Chautauqua Lake, the ratio is solidly below 30, and we see consistent cyanobacteria dominance of the phytoplankton community. There's research, I mentioned, I'm currently doing research in New Zealand. Part of the work here is looking at the ability, how does that changing ratio also affect toxin productions? And what they've discovered here, I was just talking to a collaborator the other day about this, that when you increase phosphorus concentrations, you end up typically increasing the toxicity of the blooms themselves. So this all means for Chautauqua Lake, a key management challenge is really to drop the phosphorus loading and really first get a good sense of what the phosphorus budget looks like, and then do proactive management really geared toward reducing phosphorus concentrations in the lake. And we have this challenge because there's both internal and external loading, right? So we can't just focus on one or the other. And frankly, there is no short-term solution to this, unfortunately. And I'll talk more about that when we get to the conclusions. So another project or aspect to the project is modeling of water mass movement in the lake. And this has been where it's been very tremendously valuable to have IBM and the computational power and the expertise, the modeling expertise that they have as a partner on the project. And what the team has done and looked at is this exchange of water mass between the basins. Typically, the historical belief was that the North Basin flows in the South Basin, that flows out and moves downstream. The reality is, though, that there is definite exchange. As I showed you on the method slide right at the very beginning, there's exchange between the two basins. Right? And if we look at this graph here, we can see this yellowish greenish color and a dark green color. Those are different layers in the water column. And we can see that when there's one flow in one direction, there's the opposite flow in the other direction. So the surface at about 1 to 2 feet is a lot different than 30 feet deep, and it's moving in opposite directions consistently all the time. So there's a substantial amount of interbasin exchange through the lake. Other things that we've learned about the lake is that there are internal waves that traverse the lake. So the surface might be completely calm, but we see these waves moving through that thermal structure in the lake. They can crash into the sediments, and they can also resuspend nutrients in the lake. Things like the presence of macrophytes can reduce the loading of nutrients, can stabilize the sediments, just like planting a tree on a steep hillside stabilizes the sediments. Macrophytes can stabilize the sediments and reduce that internal wave action as well. And so that's something that we want to account for more in the future, is really understanding the presence of macrophytes and what role they play in harmful algal blooms. So a little bit to summarize what I've just showed you, our focus has been on harmful algal blooms and overall water quality characterization. Here I've just highlighted some of the key results about dissolved oxygen, about phosphorus and nitrogen. Thinking forward about management, how do we take these results and do something about it? A real focus should be on understanding, quantifying external loading and internal loading. And with internal loading, improving dissolved oxygen has to be a key goal, because internal loading only occurs when oxygen is not present, right? So when oxygen is available, we do not get any internal loading. There is no short-term solution to this because, for example, if we were to apply a chemical treatment like alum to the lake, that will bind with the phosphorus and pull it out, but we still have a lot of ongoing external loading to occur. We don't know yet what individual catchment scale loading looks like. We're in the process of deploying tributary monitoring stations with support from the Chautauqua Institution and partners, deploying these to look at sub-watershed specific details. Talk about that more over the next couple slides. I've just got a couple more. Here, we didn't assess the impacts of macrophyte management. Future research is likely warranted to look at the interplay between macrophytes and algal blooms, and really developing and refining a nutrient budget. I'll talk about that on the next in 2 slides. But consistently in the future, another key goal should be continuing the monitoring that we've started and we've now done for 3 years. Here, this gives us the ability to identify trends, provide early warning indicators of potential harmful algal blooms on a season-by-season basis, and we can only really know if management remediation actions are effective if we continue to measure water quality. We can't manage it if we don't measure it. Another thing we are fully invested in addition to this presentation to all of you, is we are strong advocates for science-based management, and hence why we really appreciate the support you've given us here. We've got a number of presentations that we gave over the course of the summer. We have, as of this past year, the first researcher in residence at the Chautauqua Institution, Dr. Allison Reisick. Her picture is shown down below. She is a research member. She's a research staff with Rensselaer, my university. She reports to me. She's also an expert in phytoplankton ecology. Right? So we have someone sort of boots on the ground presence there, really invested in the lake. And we're also committed to continuing the results of this. Science really can't do much without management, and management needs the will of the people. And so we need to translate the results that we have to broader audiences. Wrapping up now, in terms of next steps, I mentioned understanding and refining our phosphorus budgets and really understanding this external loading and how much that contributes to that internal loading that can occur. And so we've just started to dig into this, but it really needs refinement, and along with the tributary monitoring stations that will soon to be deployed. And we want to understand, where is that phosphorus coming from? Where is the nitrogen coming from exactly? What types of events does it come in with? Is it only with the biggest precipitation events? That's what we've seen in other lakes that we studied. For example, in Skinny Atlas Lake, one of the Finger Lakes, we've seen that a vast majority of the phosphorus gets deposited with really extreme precipitation events, like they had a major severe storm in spring 2017 that then laid the groundwork for harmful algal blooms that they've had every season since. So understanding what types of events and where around the lake the phosphorus is coming from gives us the ability to dial in really proactive management and assess how important are things like riparian buffer zones, swales, other artificially constructed structures that might prevent the flow of phosphorus and nitrogen into the lake. And so individual catchment scale loading requires further investigation. This is really something that hasn't been done on the lake in a detailed fashion. And it's something that we can really leverage our remote sensing, our models, and our sensors to do as a key next step to the project. And with that, I'll say, I'll ask Harry if you have any further input that you want to cover. And if not, I'll see if anybody has any questions that we can answer.
Thank you, Kevin. I think that's fine. The only thing I would mention is a couple of slides ago, there was a couple of pictures of the new stream stations, tributary monitoring stations, just for everybody to see. They're now being deployed. These are all custom built, custom engineered, very special, environmentally friendly mounts. Instead of pouring concrete slabs and excavation and things like that, they go on in with helical screws. So they're low impact to the environment, and they can also be easily moved. So these basically house all the instrumentation, electronics, etc. They're powered, and next to them obviously is a stream with basically piping going down for different types of sensors to be placed in during seasonal times off winter, and also for us to actually extract samples, samples that are connected to the sophisticated sort of computer monitoring that we have, that if there are events on the lake, et cetera, they can trigger actual physical sampling that can then be taken to the lab, as well as just sensors, et cetera. So I just wanted to mention that because that's transpiring right now, and there will be an additional station, not looking like this, but on the river on the outlet to give us information what's going on sort of downstream from Celeron, et cetera. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Harry. So we're happy to take questions if anybody has questions. And I'm happy to send out my email to anybody if anybody wants to follow up one-on-one individually afterward. And hopefully you'll all get a copy of our report soon.
Our emails are both on the last page of the report.
At this time, we'd also like to introduce Michael Hill, the president of Chautauqua Institution. Michael is on. So Michael, go ahead and take it away.
Well, thanks, BJ, and I just want to thank Kevin and Harry and all of our colleagues at the Jefferson Project who really have, we're now multi-year partners, and their deep commitment to our lake and understanding how we make advances is really uplifting for us. So thank you for that. I also want to, in a really special way, thank all of our friends and colleagues in the Chautauqua County Legislature and PJ for the investment of the past year, and also our colleagues at the Sheldon Foundation who have made this possible. So excited to see this report, excited to have you see this report, and I know both Harry and Kevin are ready to answer your questions. So just profound thanks from me to all of you, and looking forward to our ongoing partnership.
Any questions? Try to direct them. Yes. You want to step up to the microphone? Actually, I can convey if you would. You can go ahead and step to the microphone if they may be able to hear you through that system. I'm not sure.
So you've been working on Chautauqua Lake for 3 years, and you've been at Lake George for 10. What would you say has been the outcome of your work at Lake George? What has been the accomplishments that you have seen?
Yeah, great question. Great question. So when we first started at Lake George, one of the key challenges was road salt and road salt mitigation. And their salt concentrations had tripled since our monitoring program began in 1980. And since then, since we began monitoring, we've identified the key sources of where the road salt's coming from, the sub-basins around the lake. We've developed the ability to look at how important are storm events coming in and driving road salt. And we've found we've also done modeling to project out how is that road salt going to change with different management programs around the lake. We've partnered with the Lake George Association there to develop a salt summit that the Lake George Association leads every year, where they bring in local municipalities, as well as many now people come in from municipalities from up to over a dozen different states to develop methods to reduce salt application. And so we've now seen the road salt concentrations have plateaued in the lake in the last 5 years. We've actually seen in one stream where road salt was a major contaminant, road salt has declined, the salt concentration has declined nearly 40% over the last 6 years. And so that's the type of management, that's the type of goal that we have for Chautauqua. Now, what I'm talking about for Chautauqua is a bit different. Because we're dealing with nitrogen and phosphorus loading. We do have road salt in Chautauqua, as we do in any area where we get road salt application to our roads. And that is a concern, but the number one concern for harmful algal blooms for water quality is the excess phosphorus and nitrogen loading. We haven't had that problem in Lake George or nearly as much as Lake George there. It's been road salts, but we have had tremendous success there in reducing that. The report overall highlights 6 major successes that we've had, and road salt is front and center as one of the ones, but we have other ones too. For example, we've developed the world's only harmful algal bloom forecasting system that we have at Lake George, where now we send an email to the Lake George Association, our partners there, within a couple days of when our sensors and our models are telling us that a harmful algal bloom might be coming. So that's a type of technology that we've pioneered there that we also want to bring to bear once we have this better understanding of the Chautauqua system to be able to forecast blooms at Chautauqua Lake as well.
One of the key is, as Kevin has said, so the collaboration part, we've listened. Now, again, we do not have the same issues, but where we're uniquely different is our lake is primarily surrounded by the state roads, and it's also a lake traversed by an interstate. So if you happen to drive along Chautauqua Lake and you look at that beautiful bridge, you'll see these nice white columns going down. Those are drop inlets. And as I talk to the DOT, what happens when they freeze? We dump a bucket of salt there. Where does the salt go? It goes in the lake. So we don't have the issues that Kevin talked about in Lake George, but in this collaboration, I've reached out to the DOT. I've also reached out to DEC and now said, can we capture that salt from instead of going into the lake, pouring into the lake? Can we capture that, add a system to the bridge? The DEC calls it low-hanging fruit. They feel it's something that can be done. I think it's an inexpensive fix, but not so much a huge impact, but at least it's the collaborative study that, okay, if we know road salt's an issue in Lake George, it's not an issue here, but it would also help us by trying to take a little bit of initiative and being proactive. So what this collaboration has done for us is opened our eyes to a couple little things that we can pick up on. But the science that these gentlemen and this is bringing, we have a resident scientist living here in this county because of this project. This, as you see, without a better, there's no joke out there. This is science in that lake. Nothing anecdotal, no old wives' tales, no old fisherman stories. This is the science working and telling us what is happening. So, again, on behalf of myself and the legislature, Harry and Kevin, thank you so much for all you do. And with Michael, again, there are some opportunities we're still focused on in the future, but thank you so much for all of your work and the partnership we've done. Any other questions that anybody has?
Kevin, I got a question. Kevin, so you shared all this data and so on and so forth with us. What do we do now? What's our next step? How do we be proactive and start attacking the algal blooms? What do we need to do?
Yeah, great question. It's really about the phosphorus and nitrogen reductions. The algal blooms will stop and certainly decline when phosphorus and nitrogen concentrations decline. The challenge there is that the system is sort of locked into this feedback because anoxia occurs consistently every year. So reducing external loading is key. It's not going to be an easy thing to do because it comes from, we typically organize it by point source and non-point sources or loading. Point sources are relatively easy to manage because it's, a point source is when you get a lot of nutrient input from one specific location, like a wastewater treatment plant. A lot of it comes from non-point source, which is things like impervious surfaces, buildings, roads, septic systems, agricultural fields. That's a lot more challenging. Understanding, though, how much implementing riparian buffer zone protections is key. Building other approaches like that are really key. The challenge also is that typically what we've seen in Skinny Atlas Lake, what we've seen in Lake George, is that our precipitation is trending upward. And when we get more and more precipitation, as we're seeing, especially in really severe storms, that flushes a lot of the phosphorus off the watershed really quickly. So that's an impact of climate change that our long-term records are showing is occurring. But it just means that proactive localized management becomes more important. And having some place for all that stormwater runoff to go that doesn't go immediately into the lake, retention ponds, et cetera, they become more important. So slowing down the rate of input and flushing into the lake as well as trying to reduce phosphorus loads coming into the lake, phosphorus concentrations that might be applied as fertilizer in many places. That's going to be key to this problem. Trying to improve dissolved oxygen concentrations to reduce that internal loading is also key.
One of the pieces, if we could, too, to tap into, the internal loading is what we have, and we know there's an issue. Also important why we're going down, myself, Pierre, Dave McCoy, and Mark Geis are going down to lobby with our lobbyists, meeting with Senator Schumer, Congressman Langworthy, is this Army Corps of Engineers Aquatic Ecosystem Restoration and the Army Corps' New Start project. We're able to take the science now from Jefferson and say, they're telling you if we get the garbage out of the lake, we start to improve it. Thus, another reason and a push for us to get that assistance from the Army Corps and getting a plan in place for that ecosystem restoration project. So this is all working. We're moving constantly to try to get this going. But this science, as Bob had asked, what do we do next? These are steps that we're going to continue to pursue. And again, it's no easy task. You know, Kevin made a good point. When was the best time to plant a tree 25 years ago? When's the second best time? Today. And that's what we feel the Jefferson Project is, and what we're doing now. Today is the day we start to make those changes. And we've been doing that. This partnership is going to continue. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you so much, Kevin, Harry, and Michael. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Have a great evening.
Thank you all again for your support. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Wow, that was a mouthful or two, wasn't it? Okay, and the last on our agenda is a presentation of the Salary Review Commission final recommendations. So our Salary Review Commission has done yeoman's work for several months, putting together their recommendations, and now an esteemed member of the commission is here tonight to share with all of us the recommendations of the Salary Review Commission. So I'd like to introduce Frank Beach, and he's going to be assisted and aided by our Director of Human Resources, Debbie McCoskey.
All right, we should be able to do this probably 45, 50 minutes. So, anyway, good evening. I'm Frank Beach, and Deb's here with me. Debbie's been phenomenal in this, and I want to just go over kind of with this, and I have some information and things to do. So, what this is that the legislature voted in March of 23 to put together this group to go over salaries and look at different opportunities in regards to the way the salaries were and where they should be with regards to recommendations. And that's the first thing. You know, we've seen a lot of press, and I've had to do interviews and all sorts of craziness over this. One thing we do need to establish is that we don't have a horse in this race. We're not, I saw a headline that said that we want double digit. Oh, I don't want it. I don't care. It's not going to help me at all. Anyway, and also other things that we've seen in the newspaper, the op-eds about all these percentages and not being fair to the public. The legislature, the legislators have not seen an increase in income from here for 22 years. So to combat what that was being told in the paper, I got a hold of the Federal Bureau of Labor Statistics and found out that the pricing for the newspaper from 2001 to 23 has gone up 104%. So unfortunately, that means that you legislators can't afford a paper. Okay, so just say, but we looked at this very seriously. We did this, and in May we started to get together. Steve Abdallah, Jay Gould, Vince Horrigan, Sharon Smead, myself, Dan Hetzenrider, and Greg Krause. We got together and started having meetings, and what we wanted to do is we wanted to be tangible when we did this. So with the help of Debbie and her staff, we wanted to know salaries of all the counties in the state. So we started with that, and cost of living, populations, and all these things. So that's where our base started. Then we started to wind it down because we needed to be in an arena that was comparable to what we have here. Okay, so that's what we did. So we'll do this pretty quickly. We had a number of points that we discussed, and we discussed them thoroughly. And the first thing we did is we came to know from research, like I said, that the legislature has not received any increase since 2001. Okay, that's the other. And we also found out that there was a commission about 10 years ago. Also, that commission, there was nothing done. Now, we don't know why that would have been. It could have been that maybe it was before an election or whatever the circumstance was, but they did not act in any way, shape, or form. So we thought that was a little bit disingenuous as well. Now, the first thing that we decided that in our conversation is that the last meeting of a commission was 10 years ago. Too long. So we are going to recommend that a commission, not us necessarily, meet once every 4 years. That's going to cut down any disparaging in regards to amounts, if there is any. Another thing, the press seemed to exaggerate was the fact that they thought that we want to give this massive increase now, and that's only half of it, and 4 years from now they can get the rest. That's not true. Basically, we think it's valuable to have a commission meet once every 4 years to establish the situation at that time. They may not recommend anything, but it should be more frequently than randomly every decade or 12 years or whatever. It just makes more sense. Okay, so that's the first thing that we made the recommendation. Next, we went through the categories of personnel that we were looking at, which would be the county executive, county clerk, the sheriff, and y'all. I'm not from the South, I just said that. Anyway, so we start with the county executive. And what we did is we looked at counties that mirrored some of the established criteria, population, size, that kind of stuff. And then for county executive, we came up with 14. 14. And then of that 14, only 9 responded to provide us with all the data that we were asking for. Then we kind of honed it down even more to counties that used county executives. Some had managers, some had different categories with different job descriptions and things like that. So we took those, and what we did is we averaged what those 3 counties that we came up with, what it was. And then we looked at that amount as an average. Then what we did is we know we're not in a really high-end county, but we're in our county. So we decided that no way that we could justify going and trying to recommend that in that type of salary. So we cut it by 50%, the difference, and that's what we went with. Now, you made a good point when we did this presentation. When was it? Last Monday? Okay. Yeah. Tuesday?
Admin services.
Tuesday. Okay. Okay, thanks. And there was a concern about one of the counties that we had used as being, more south and more affluent, extremely south. So I looked at another methodology in trying to see whether we were really off base or not. So what I did is I took the formula that I've used in other companies that I own or have run and looked at this kind of stuff, because I've done this hundreds of times. So I took Putnam, Rensselaer, was it Broome, and Chautauqua, okay? Those four, and that's what I was going to use as a basis for this. Now, this is not something the commission did. I'm just doing this to give you an example of the consistency that we have. And I took out the highest and the lowest. So that alleviated that concern. Took the ones that were left, added them up, and divided them. And we, doing it the way we started out with the 50%, came up with a salary of $127,620. When you did it the other way, it came up with a salary of $127,700. So we were in the same ballpark. So that's the recommendation that we're going to make in that arena. Now, also, we know that the county clerk, the same thing, but with that we stuck with, now that we did have the reporting of all nine counties that did participate, so we could get a more even number. But when we got the number, we broke that down and then divided it in half. That's where we came up with what we thought was fair for that. Did the same with the sheriff and the same with the legislators. Now, some of the things that we found out in our study of all this is that a lot of these personnel, like the legislators, their salaries include benefits, or benefits are available or provided in some way, shape, or form, maybe a discounted amount. So what we did with the legislators is we looked for the average, and then we got the difference and divided it in half, and that's where we came up with what we did. Now, so those are the recommendations. It's not what we want, it's not what we need, and we're not looking to try to get something in 4 years so we can get you more money or any of that silliness. So the last thing that we came up with and that we did is that we thought and we considered, because a lot of the conversation we had during this, and I kind of brought it up a lot, was dealing with CPI, Consumer Price Index, and all this kind of stuff, because there's a lot of variables with that. So, and in the Chautauqua County Charter Section 407, CPI increases are included, okay? And we think that the legislators should be included in that. The reason being, so that when we get 4 years later, if they have a commission that does it, maybe there won't be a need. Maybe doing that, it'll be enough of a pilot program study turn time from 4 years to know where that's going to lead. You can kind of project from that point. Maybe that will make having a commission easier and maybe even moot, but you won't know until that happens. So those are the recommendations that we made. Anything I missed?
No, you did good.
I did?
Got it all.
You like the newspaper thing, 104%? I get, some things just grind my gears. Anyway, so that's kind of what we came up with. These guys did a great job. Everybody did a great job. We have one of our members here. You want to stand up? Thank you, Sharon. She was the smart one. So that's pretty much it. We did this, and I hope that I hope that some action is taken this time, because I mean realistically, and some of this too has to do. Oh, one of the big things though, so that you're not on the hook, you can't be self-indulgent or anything else. All of these changes would take effect in January 1st of 2026.
Or next term.
Huh?
Or next term.
Or next term. Or
next term.
What?
The next term.
Yes.
For all of them, yes.
Yeah, January of 26 is when the next term, and for the sheriff, it would be 27, January 27. Okay?
No, no, or 22.
That's-
Thank you so much.
But what about the second part? Thank you. I know I'm trying to compete, you know, it's like having the headliner first and then the warm-up act. Thanks, Pierre. Thank you, my friend. It was fun. It was fun. Bob? Thanks, Frank.
All right. Now that you're all awake and ready to continue on for a couple hours, comes to announcements. And I know there are some legislators who have announcements tonight. Legislator Vanstrom.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to announce the Chautauqua County Soil and Water Conservation District has their 2024 tree and shrub sale underway. They're taking orders through April 1st. It's a first come, first served basis. If you need to reach them for more information, you can either go to their website or call 716-664-2351 extension 5, and their email is chaut.co@soilwater.org. Another exciting event that's happening in our county is the Chautauqua County 4-H 10th Annual Green Tie Fair, Sunday, February 25th. And there's a new venue. It's going to be at the Celeron Harbor Hotel, Chautauqua Harbor Hotel. And the proceeds will benefit Chautauqua County 4-H youth development programs. They'll have a basket raffle and a bake sale at 3, dinner at 5, and pie auction to follow, dinner. And I'm looking for, oh yes, February 25th. February 25th. And you can call Lindsay at 716-664-9502. Extension 212 for more information. Thank you.
Thank you. Other announcements. Legislator Harmon.
I'd like to take a moment to recognize Mark Geis. He's our Chautauqua County Deputy County Executive for Economic Development and CEO of the County of Chautauqua Industrial Development Agency. Mark has been named to the 2024 edition of the Buffalo's Business First prestigious Power 250 listing. The Power 250 is an annual list of the 250 people whom, after 3 months of research, reporting, and debate, the full news staff at Business First regards as the most influential and powerful people in the 8 counties that make up Western New York. In 2023, under Mark's leadership, the CCIDA oversaw unprecedented economic development investments in the county that totaled $842 million. That's $842 million. These investments will retain and create about 2,900 jobs right here in Chautauqua County. This continued record investment in our county demonstrates what we're doing here is working. We are making Chautauqua the best place to open or grow a business, and the projects we are currently working on will continue these successes in 2024. So congratulations to Mark, our Chautauqua County Department of Planning and Economic Development, and the County of Chautauqua Industrial Development Agency. Please keep up the great work. And Mark left.
He's too modest. Okay, any other announcements? Legislator Wilfong.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. On February 5th at 7:30, the Jamestown City Council work session, myself and my assistant, Lisa Vanstrom, Pierre Chagnon and County Executive Wendell, and Shannon Fisher, the airport manager, are going to be meeting with the Jamestown City Council to discuss a market survey that's going on for the Jamestown Airport at this particular time. We're going to get together to actually discuss what our plans are going to be going forward and what a vital economic driver commercial air service coming back to the city of Jamestown will mean to the city of Jamestown. And I'm inviting all legislators to come if you'd like to. Just let me know. So I heard that there's a problem getting seats there, so we might have to have some reserved seats, but you are welcome to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Any other announcements? Hearing none, I will move to the second privilege of the floor. Members of the public may comment on any subject. A member of the legislature may speak on any subject. Individual comments are limited to 3 minutes, and comments representing a group shall be limited to 5 minutes. Is there anyone wishing to address the second privilege of the floor? We really thinned out the audience. Legislator Pavlik. We have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? Legislator Bankowski, all in favor?